door-to-door combined transport's contribution today, and you all remember certainly 40 to 70% greater energy efficiency than unimodal road haulage and 60 to 90% smaller carbon footprint than the unimodal trucking alternative. We think that combined transport is the low-hanging fruit to achieve our climate goals. That's why I would like to hand over to Daniel Mess from the Cabinet Timmermans, who will tell us how he sees combined transport in the context of the Green Deal.
Yes, thank you very much. I hope that everybody can hear me and that the connection is working. Is it? Yeah.
Yes, it's working.
Okay, great, super. No, thanks a lot for the invitation, and apologies that I couldn't be there physically in person. I would have loved to come, but like indeed I have another appointment. It's day one after our Repower EU proposals yesterday, so there's still quite some work on that going on. But I didn't want to miss the opportunity to speak with you about combined transport, because it is a very important topic, and some of you may already have noticed it was mentioned explicitly also in the Repower EU plans that we've presented yesterday. It's an important topic for us. That's why I wanted to be here. Important topic for the European Green Deal, because every time when I think back about, well, the first crisis that hit us when we were in the mandate, the pandemic, and think about freight, I have this picture in my mind of like these, you know, the satellite picture of all the trucks that were stuck at the border and needed help from the GPS system to see whether they could move around again and where exactly. Fortunately, we also had green lanes ultimately where that became a bit quicker. But I think that during that pandemic, we were very glad that we also had the train, and we're very glad that we also had the inland waterways. It just shows that when you hit a crisis, it's very good that you work on matters like combined transport, so that the crisis hits you a bit less because you use different transport modes. For us, it's really the more multimodal your freight system is, the more crisis-proof it is. And that has now gained even some further importance. I think that we were all aware of once your combined transport has the sustainable transport leg as its dominant leg, that can bring a lot in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. But now it has even got some more urgency with the Repower EU plans that we presented yesterday, which are really lots of proposals to make sure that we cut our reliance on fossil fuels from Russia, including oil, which is of course very relevant for transport. And you know, when we went into that as cabinets, also in the Commission, and like making these proposals, we very soon said, like, listen, okay, we do need to work on energy savings in our transport system. It is really high time to do that, but of course we need to do that in a way that we can still move around. So we need to be smart about this energy savings and still have ways to move around. And in that sense, your sector and your businesses are going to be very important to us. And that's why the combined transport was mentioned explicitly in the Repower EU plans. It got quite a prominent place in there, in the sense that you know, there's where you can really achieve also energy savings. We're all aware of like the energy savings per ton transported if you have rail as a leg on the big distances. But I'm just telling you that your work has gained some further importance now, and we will have we were already to have a fresh look at our combined transport directive, but that fresh look will now get some more urgency in doing it in a way that we produce also the energy savings that we need in transport. So in that sense, your study that you're presenting, well, it's very timely. It couldn't have come at a better moment, and it will really feed into the work that we will be doing, where the services will start. I can already say tell you where our priorities as a Cabinet of Timmermans are for that work on combined transport. You are all aware already that we've already made as a Commission quite some infrastructure proposals that are very relevant for you. Multimodal terminals for the first time found their quite prominent place in the Trans-European Transport Network. That's of course important if you want combined transport to happen. As Joseph sitting next to you also already knows, we made quite some ambitious proposals also on rail to make that a very an even better part of the solution than it already is. And the combined transport now needs to deliver the right framework, the right incentives to use combined transport. And that's what we will be doing. We will have a bit of a broader view than just railroad with that initiative. We want it to be truly multimodal, so also to include, for example, inland waterways, because again, as the crisis has showed, the more multimodal you are, the better you are prepared for a crisis. So truly multimodal and really making a serious stretch in working on the right incentives to overcome the challenges that we know they are there. Because we have to be honest, combined transport is really a very promising field to look at to produce all these political priorities that we have, but we have to be honest about it. There are also quite some obstacles to make it as attractive as we want it to be. Some of the obstacles are for us working for the politicians to overcome and are a bit of a, we also need the help from the sector to make things more convenient. Other parts that we need to work on are more like where we can work together to convince others to look at this closely, and then there's also a leg that we will also depend on actually ultimately the users of combined transport that we also work on how we can help them choosing this as a smart option. And on each of these legs, we will look at that within the framework of the Combined Transport Directive. So first, on like the challenge that we need to work on a bit together is, of course, the cost factor when you use combined transport, and the fact that you have to do something additional in a transshipment or a multimodal terminal in order to make it happen. Shunting is not always easy, especially if you combine it in the future with an electric truck. So there are many issues that we need to work on, but the cost differential is one that we think we should look at pretty seriously. And we want to look at it in a way that we want to give the maximum leeway for member states to help in overcoming any cost difference that remains, so that we have a good framework for that. Perhaps also some bolder requirements for member states to make sure that the plans are also a bit more solid than they have been so far. So a bit more, well, stringent is always a bad word, but a bit more like challenging, so that to the member states, so that they work seriously on it. But we will need you as a sector too, because no matter how you turn it, people will only start using this more if it's also as convenient as possible. So we also need you as a sector to help us come with convenient solutions that make sure that once the public sector needs to come in, it comes in a way that the private sector also has helped first in making things convenient. I think that is quite important, and I'm very happy to stay in touch on that. Also, when we work on the Combined Transport Directive, also as the Cabinet of Timmermans, as you know, Commissioner Valian is of course in charge of this, but we are very interested in this because of the Green Deal. So I'm happy to hear ideas on that. Now, the second element that I think we should be discussing a bit more when we discuss combined transport is we tend to, well, some of us tend to look at mainly these things like, oh, the cost differential and the perceived complexity of doing it purely an economic story. Whereas we should probably also talk a bit more, especially when we expect national governments in the EU countries to help us boost this form of transport. We should also talk more about the collateral benefits. You know, more combined transport simply means less congestion on your roads. Less congestion on your roads means quicker traffic on your roads and efficiency gains for your society. And obviously, if you choose sustainable and rail, for instance, is the dominant leg in the multimodal transport system, you have lots of sustainability savings too. And now the energy savings that we need to do in view of the Russian situation is coming on top. So we need to have a bit of a broader discussion, not only purely on the economic side, but also on the societal value of combined transport, because combined transport has a societal value, and perhaps we should help each other in getting that across also clearly. And then the third element that I wanted to mention is also really a very important element. People working in the transport sector know and experience far more than us here in the Bijlmermeer that often it's a challenge when you speak with people that book the freight services and look at, you know, the last euro cent in terms of like its cost. You see a movement now with customers of freight services companies that are wanting to choose more sustainably, because also their shareholders and their stakeholders and their customers, especially their young ones, are expecting sustainable transport choices. And that will be very important if one really wants to boost a multimodal transport system where the sustainable mode is the dominant one. So our initiative from the Commission, Count Your Emissions. So the framework to help calculate emissions, and I would say also energy use in the transport system in a more harmonized and common fashion, that will be essential to boost also this form of transport, because like that you get this discussion going as it should be going, that customers say, listen, I now have more work to do on sustainable corporate governance, because also that's also required in our society. I will have to look at my transport and my mobility and the freight services that I use, and how sustainable is that? And Count Your Emissions will hopefully give them the framework that they can use to do that in an informed way. So I think that is a very important thing to work on together as well. And it will also be coming rather soon after the Green Freight package, where the Combined Transport Directive will also be in. So that's a bit in a nutshell what I what I wanted to also transmit today. And I really regret that I have to run actually like after this, because I was actually really looking forward to hearing the others also with their experience and expertise. And I hope that there will be a way that I can look at a recording or so of the event or hear back what on everything that was said. Because for the European Green Deal, this is important for us. It is really combining the transport mode. It's basically 1 + 1 is 3. It is like there's an extra gain. 1 + 1 is 3 in the sense of like it's good for the economy when you have less congestion on your roads. It's good for the climate, obviously, when sustainable transport modes are the dominant leg. And now it's also good for energy savings in view of the Russian aggression against Ukraine. So 1 + 1 is 3, and I hope that we can really work together from our side to give the right framework, and with you to make sure that it's convenient and that combined transport and multimodal transport is indeed the smart choice to make.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Daniel. Points are absolutely taken. I'm really happy that you made the point on the cost factor, on the value of CT. Of course, everybody thinks it's a complex situation with combined transport, but it adds value. So even if it's more complicated, we can take out complexity at the end. It is a sustainable mode of transport, and you also mentioned on the side of the greening freight package, the count emission directive, which also is very important for us. We simply think that combined transport is the low-hanging fruit in order to achieve the ambitious targets that you have in the Cabinet Timmermans, in the Commission on the whole. And I'm very, very happy that you really brought it so well to the point. Thank you very much, Daniel. We keep in touch, and we see you very soon. Thank you. I think this was a very good point to set the scene. So this was the perspective of the Commission. We will now continue with the perspective of a member state. In this case, it will be Germany, and we have a video message from the German Transport Ministry, from the Secretary of State.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad to be able to address you today a subject of growing importance, both for sustainability as well as for logistics, the potential of combined transport. As the German federal government, we are convinced of its importance and role in establishing resilient and sustainable logistic chains. Therefore, it is explicitly mentioned in our coalition agreement and the German climate program. Besides financing combined transport handling facilities of Deutsche Bahn, we also support the creation as well as extension of handling facilities of other companies. We've been doing it since 1998 with quotas of up to 80%. For furthering combined transport, we are currently pursuing a variety of actions. For example, we will modernize the funding program for businesses. Our focus there is especially on digitalization and automatization of terminals. because we believe that this holds an enormous potential to efficiently shift freight onto rails and waterways. Given our ambitions for combined transport, I'm delighted to hear about the results of the study by the International Union of Road Rail Combined Transport, which emphasizes the case for this mode of transport. Let us therefore together advance combined transport to ease road traffic and save energy. Thank you for listening. I wish you a successful event.
Thank you very much, Mr. State Secretary Luksic. Now that we have heard the Commission, we have heard the Member State, now we will hear a member of the European Parliament talking about the issue and addressing URR and CT for Europe. It will be Mr. Giesecke from the Green Party.
Thank you very much for inviting me for the keynote speech at the Combined Transport for EU conference. Dear ladies and gentlemen, transport currently contributes to around 5% to EU GDP. It employs more than 10 million people in Europe, but it also is responsible for almost 30% of Europe's emissions. So it is obvious. The transport sector needs to become more sustainable and cut back on CO2 emissions. But currently, freight transport in Europe continues to grow. Road freight transport in particular is projected to increase by around 40% by 2030 and by a little over 80% by 2050. So we are in a difficult situation. On the one side, we need transport to bring food to the supermarket or raw materials to our industry and SMEs. On the other side, there is a need to reduce emissions to stop global warming and to deliver on the Paris Agreement. This is where combined transport can play a vital role. It makes us use the strengths of each mode of transport. Thus, it helps us reducing emissions whilst ensuring the supply of goods. However, in order to fulfill this twofold task, combined transport needs support. First, through the supply of an adequate infrastructure in Europe, we need to modernize our Transport European network infrastructure and ensure capacity. More targeted investments into the physical infrastructure are needed, in particular into better interconnections between different modes of transport, but especially also on our rail infrastructure. Second, we need an ambitious AFIR in order to make our infrastructure ready for new technologies, such as electric, hydrogen, fuel cell or e-fuels. The EPP is in favor of a technological neutral approach. Third, we need to make available data and make better use of it. Real-time data such as in traffic or capacities can help users to make the right decisions, but often it is not available. Last, we need direct support for combined transport, not only through legislation, but also through appropriate funding, especially for innovations. Dear all, transport plays a key role in our society. To decarbonize it is a major challenge to reach climate neutrality by 2050. In the legislative process, it is important to get feedback from stakeholders in civil society. That is why I welcome the zero-carbon combined transport study. It gives us an insight into the potential of combined transport. Thank you very much for your attention and have a successful meeting here in Brussels. See you soon. Good afternoon, goodbye.
Yeah. Thank you very much again. I think this is very promising and reassuring that also the European Parliament is standing behind. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Josef Doppelbauer, CEO of the ERA, European Union Agency for Railways, and he will give his vision on the topic of combined transport and mainly from the side of energy efficiency and capacity.
I hope this works. Can we have, yeah. Thank you very much. And could I have my slides, please? First of all, many thanks you IRR and Charlie for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today on the occasion of the presentation of the zero carbon combined transport study. My presentation, as Charlie has announced, will be predominantly about the infrastructure, about what I call high performance infrastructure. As Daniel Mays has indicated, we have time. I start without the slide. So we are in post-pandemic times, hopefully, and from all what we can see, the rail sector appears to suffer from long COVID syndromes. Yeah, we are not yet where we were before the crisis, and we are already in the middle of another crisis, which is, of course, the terrible Russian aggression and the war in Ukraine. Both crises have highlighted the importance of rail, in particular for maintaining the supply chains, and of course also in particular combined transport. Now I will start right away, if that would work. So can you please switch to the next slide? So we do it manually. So I start right away with the potential of combined transport. We heard in the speeches of our politicians that it is important to shift transport volumes, but the transport volumes have to come from somewhere. So if you look into Eurostat, road transport is split into distance classes. And so the blue bars in this slide are the actual figure, the last figures available from 2018. And there you see that a significant amount of road transport is for distances above 500 kilometers. And there is even a non-negligible part of road transport for distances above 2000 kilometers. Now, the overall situation of the railway system in Europe is not very good. If we just look at the freight sector, in the country where I'm currently based, the modal share of rail freight is 9.3%. Germany, we heard the state secretary, is at 18.2%. My home country, Austria, is at 27.5%. The average Europe, latest figures, again, 2019, is 16.9%, so slightly short of 17%. The bad news is that despite all the measures, despite all the political programs, despite 4 railway packages, this modal share has not only not increased since 2000, it has even slightly decreased. Now, if we look at that slide, if we would shift all road transport above 700 kilometers to rail, and the way to do this is clearly via combined transport. On the way here, I always have to take a piece of motorway from Valenciennes to Mons, and I counted thousands of lorries, and about 90% of these lorries were semi-trailers. So you could easily shift these volumes on rail, and you could immediately get a market share of 36%, and you could immediately reduce CO2 by 40 million tons per annum, which is 21% of the 190 million. Also, these figures show that our goals can be a bit more ambitious than what is stated as 30 by 2030, because this could be a very quick solution. All the technologies that you need for this are already there. There is no technology needed. So what is the big problem? Capacity. Obviously, we have a capacity gap in the European railway system. And of course, the first step to gaining more capacity would be to better utilize what we already have. existing infrastructure. Monday, Michael Stahlhut and I were together on another event, and he gave the example of the corridor Rotterdam-Genoa, where on the left side of the Rhine in France, there is a double-track railway line that exists, but it is not used. So could be a first step to get capacity. Then the other one is, obviously capacity is limited in peak times, and we have an uneven distribution of load, and in particular in terminals. And this is also the consequence of our poor planning capabilities. I remember a couple of years back, I believe it was even in that room, we had a presentation about Eletta. I'm always ashamed that for a lorry, you can predict the arrival plus minus 10 minutes. And we in rail, we are proud of plus minus 12 hours. Of course, if you can predict the arrival of a train in a terminal only to half a day accuracy, you shouldn't be surprised when you have load situations. Now, on the next slide, I go a bit more, and excuse me if that becomes a bit theoretical, but it has enormous importance to understand where we need to invest and where investment is less effective. So obviously, and we heard it today, we are in an economic competition, and economic competition is on cost, and cost leads to price. In terms of the cost, we need to consider the contributions of the line, but in particular the contribution of the nodes or hubs or terminals. Now, we know that in a railway system, trains neither appear suddenly nor disappear, meaning the capacity needs to be balanced from end to end. We need to have an end-to-end consideration. And now, to show you the importance of the physical infrastructure, I have drawn up two concrete cases. This is a very simplified model, but it is accurate in its conclusions. You have a freight train running at 120 kilometers per hour. It's an optimistic assumption, but nonetheless realistic. To the left, you have one 20-kilometer segment. To the right, you have also a 20 kilometers segment. To the left, you have no interchange possibilities, no crossover. On the right, you have block sections every 5 kilometers with crossover. In rough terms, the left situation corresponds to the situation in Germany, where during the last couple of years, all the crossover possibilities have been removed for cost reasons, because switches cost, maintenance of switches cost is. The right situation corresponds to Austria or Switzerland, where you have many such crossovers every couple of kilometers, and where all the lines are also signaled in both directions. So here, if we look into the travel time, is of course the same in both cases. Capacity on the left is 6 trains per hour. On the right, it's 24 trains per hour. But the key problem appears when we are in a situation of disturbance. Just last week, I had the pleasure to be on a train from Lille to Roissy, and I almost missed my flight parce que le train avant a percuté une biche. So you are stuck in your train and you cannot do anything. So left side, Germany, because the wrong left track is not signaled, you can only run at 40 kilometers per hour on site. In the case when it is signaled, you can of course continue at your travel speed. And then when you have the crossover, in consequence, in the degraded mode, the travel time increases drastically and the throughput decreases even more drastically. So you are at 1.5 trains per hour, whereas in the right, you stay at 12 trains per hour, which is still a reasonable capacity. Now, we hear, specifically in Sunday speeches of politicians, that digitalization will solve everything. Now, the lower left picture assumes that with digital techniques, without investing into the infrastructure, you can increase the train speed to 120. You get it back without having to invest into signals. In consequence, of course, you get the travel time back to the 10 minutes, but the capacity remains at a very low level. And you cannot do much about it because, and this is the important message, this is a physical structural problem. Rail is guided by tracks. Rail is operated in the physical separation of space and time. And when the train ahead of you has percuté une biche, you cannot fly over this train. You have to wait until it is cleared. Aviation, you can go in 3 dimensions. On the road, you can go around obstacles. On the rail, you can't. And the most expensive, most sophisticated digital technology cannot solve this problem. This is the key message that you need to understand and also push in your political statement, because here you see the importance in real terms in capacity. Because for every system, when you approach the limit of capacity, the actual transit time becomes very unpredictable. When you are in the flat part, so when you are below the marginal capacity, you operate punctually. We saw this during COVID when there was less traffic, we were all punctual. Even the same holds true for the aviation. But when we approach the limit, then it becomes very erratic. Last week, I read in Frankfurter Allgemeine that traveling with Deutsche Bahn is now a kind of travel lottery. So in some cases, you win and your train arrives on time. But currently, the punctuality in Germany is below 70% for long distance train, with punctuality measured on a 6 minutes basis. And I already mentioned the problem of the estimated time of arrival. When you are in this right part, you cannot predict the arrival, and then you get overload in the terminals, you get over capacity, and the problem starts from the bottom again. So, key message is we need a proper working physical infrastructure that has the right and frequent possibilities to overtake. Otherwise, we will always be limited in capacity. Now, I'm coming to the next element, which is called compatibility. And compatibility means that, of course, your vehicles are compatible with the infrastructure. And some key aspects are, of course, the axle load, the loading gauge, signaling system. There is one aspect that does not necessarily have to do with compatibility, but nonetheless, it's a very annoying feature also for combined transport. In Europe, we do not have harmonized train lengths. We have the nominal train lengths of 740 meters, but in some countries we have a different definition of what 740 meters means. In some countries we have 835 meters, in others we have 600 meters. And I'm not sure whether any Italian is here, but in Italy you have a different train lengths as per every line. What does it mean? Either you normalize to the shortest train lengths. You gave a figure of 550 meters. Then you lose, of course, a lot of capacity, a lot of efficiency, or you have to change and shunt on every border, and then you lose again efficiency, time, and money. Now, codification of lines, wagons, and intermodal loading units is now an essential part of the new TSI 22 package. Together with UIRR, in 2018, we did a study, facilitation on combined transport, and this study, the result, are now worked into the TSI 2022. And in the operation TSI, we also will now make sure that combined transport trains are no longer considered as exceptional transport. So there will be a lot of improvement for combined transport in the new TSI that will be voted in risk by the end of 2022, and that will enter into force in 2023. Now, final point that Charlie asked me was electrification. And of course, electrification is a main contributor to the excellent environmental performance of rail. Looking at the figure in the middle, rail only contributes 0.4% of the CO2 emissions of transport, 0.4. 72% or 71% is coming from road. And obviously, the CO2 efficiency is not the reason for electrification. The reason for electrification is, again, that in Europe, diesel locomotives are less efficient than electrical locomotives. So you cannot run at higher speed, you cannot run the long trains. And then we have the problem with the islands of non-electrification. And again, if we have to change locomotive all the time, we lose again performance and capacity. So the true driver for electrification in Europe is operational efficiency and capacity. We heard also in the statement of both the State Secretary and the MEP about synthetic fuels. Synthetic fuels is, of course, one of the buzzwords with which the aviation industry wants to create funds from the European Commission and to promise clean aviation in 2040. But if synthetic fuel is there, it could, of course, also decarbonize diesel trains. But again, our problem is not the environment, the CO2, our problem is efficiency. So another hype and another technology that is very much pushed is the digital automatic coupling. Firstly, you see that single wagon load is a minority program, and in some countries it has disappeared. Problem is simply if you have to wait 2 to 3 days before your train can depart, it's not competitive. You see also very clearly that combined transport, denoted here as intermodal trains, is already now a very important segment, but it will be the dominating segment of the future. Well, there is a big hype, there is many test runs, and we wish those projects all the best of success. The introduction is now foreseen for 2030. The influence on combined transport will be marginal because, as you saw in the previous slides, you will possibly be able to improve the efficiency in the nodes, but on the lines and for capacity, it will be almost negligible as the influence. And as for the digitalization, for the D, I believe you should investigate whether there are cheaper alternatives to digitalize combined transport. Charlie, I have 2 more slides, so that then I'm done. So a 5,000 euro coupler is perhaps not the most cost-effective way to digitalize combined transport. Final slide, innovation. Yeah, you know that there are many proposed innovations. Some are obviously stupid, like this one. Others are also stupid, such as Hyperloop. Nonetheless, they are promoted by the European Commission. They have stated in an official paper that Hyperloop can replace long-distance aviation. Imagine you have tubes going out of Zaventem in all directions across Brussels, then you immediately realize that this is as nonsensical as that one. But the dangerous innovation is, and this is why I've shown this picture, is catenary on roads. Yeah? This is still promoted in some countries by some parties as the solution of the future. Now, we still will have the 10 times higher energy consumption of a lorry, and it will be even higher because they have to carry batteries. Secondly, we will have the fine dust. Thirdly, we will have the road safety problem, and we will have the congestion. And remember what Daniel Mays said on the societal values. So I believe we need to make sure that such stupid ideas are not eating valuable funds and valuable time. So now I come to the conclusion, and sorry that I have taken a bit longer, Charlie. It's important to note that we need to come from good intentions and from wishful thinking to concrete action. On combined transport, we know it is possible. We know that infrastructure exists, and even the improvements, adding the crossovers, can be done on existing infrastructure and not a new infrastructure. And thirdly, with electrification, we can add additional benefits. So we need to stop the fragmentation of the European railway system. We need also to possibly create Eurocontrol for rail. We need to have a coherent and maintained infrastructure, and we need to have a market-oriented approach focused on where the potential for trade is, and this is combined transport. And this can, of course, be supported by digital solutions, but these need to be cost-effective. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thank you so much, Josef. So coming from wishful thinking to concrete actions, we did our study in the last 6 months on zero carbon combined transport, and I would like to give the floor to Thorsten Sickenberger, who will introduce the outcomes of this study.
Is this working for you, my microphone? Perfect. And then maybe, yeah, and I also need my slides, so maybe we can also switch to the second presentation. So there the slides are. So good morning also from my side. So I'm very happy to be here. And I guess we have heard a lot in this presentation already about electrification and about energy efficiency. And I would like to take you now also into this journey of zero carbon combined transport, which was a focus on our study. So you might seen all these numbers also in the other talks. So there's a high emission to really reduce emissions in the transport sector over the next years. And of course, there are some key technologies which are on the market right now or might be introduced in the near future, really to support this journey to become carbon-free for the transport sector, and especially for the combined transport, which is one solution in this direction. So our study mainly was focusing on the technology readiness on the different processes which are needed to really operate combined transport. So from the electric trucks for the road legs, then for the transshipment equipment which is needed, how can electrification be a key technology in this way also. Then also we looked on the battery technologies which are currently available. What are the prices? What are the cost of ownership in these different processes? But also then, of course, what is about, if you look a bit in the more future, what is about energy efficiency? So where is still potential to be more efficient in the transport way? And what we understand in door-to-door combined transport, which was considered in the study, is of course a combination of road transport, typically then in a length of 70 kilometers, around 70 kilometers, then long-haul transport on the rail network, which of course is electrified, and then the different techniques which are available for the transshipment from the horizontal up to the vertical transshipment. And the study was done in 3 parts. I guess you might have a printout of the study already, and Charlie, I guess it's also available or might be available in the near future then from the website. So you can have a look in the study if you like, and you will find all the numbers there and the table works and the comparison. So I will not bother you with all of these details for now. But what we did here is we were really looking, so what is the technology on the drive technology, especially focusing there on the road transport. So should it be an electric, battery electric truck in the end, which is supporting the road leg, or is there also let's say other technologies like fuel cell battery electric trucks possible in that way? And there's a comparison of all the different steps in the study, from producing the energy to transporting, storaging energy, fueling technologies, and so on. So that this is really a full well-to-wheel consideration in the end, and not only a tank-to-wheel perspective. So then in the second step, we were coming to the equipment of the transshipment also. So what can be electrified in that way? What is already there? We had interviews with the equipment providers to align with their roadmap, and then also in the last step, we were looking on the technical developments, which is done in terms of energy efficiency, where we have looking on the one hand side on the combined transport for the rail leg, but we also looked on the road leg or on the road transport in that way to have also fair comparison where is energy efficiency still possible and in which numbers in the end. So for now, I will guide you to these 3 chapters where we click quickly. And also what turns out comparison, the fuel cell electric truck with a battery electric truck, which is in the comparison. And it turns out that especially for the road leg, which is then combined transport with its typical length 70 kilometers, 150 kilometers, and so on, which are there. So battery electric is still a very high energy efficient way to do the transport. So there's no energy waste in that sense for producing hydrogen first and then using this for transport. You can use it directly in the battery electric truck. And of course, there's a high potential to be zero carbon, depending on the electricity generation. So if the EU electricity mix is going to zero carbon, you will participate automatically also for the BEV truck then in the end. So prices, we were looking at battery prices, where there's huge paper on the cost side saying, okay, battery prices will go down with all the gigafactories currently building up, but also there's a price reduction in that sense, that if you look at total cost of ownership for BEV truck and compare this with the diesel truck, then you can see that in a couple of years also the BEV trucks is much cheaper in total cost of ownership compared to the diesel, because okay, the fuel price is also going up, are expected to go up over the next years. So then from the transshipment equipment, we have been looking what is there in the market, which is already used. So there's a lot of electricity equipment already used in terminal operation from crane and so on. But still there are some improvements possible, especially from this equipment which has to move a lot. So there's often a diesel generator installed just to produce electricity. So there you could also think about reducing this use of diesel and use a battery electric equipment there. There's also roadmaps for the different operators and also for the OEMs providing this equipment, that it will be in place soon and available soon. Again, reducing CO2 emissions, then on these processes, you see it here on the table, will directly then reduce CO2 emissions of gram and tons of CO2 per hour of operation. There's also possible to use a shunting locomotive, which is currently developed for the Port of Rotterdam. So there's a paper on that where you can have a look like, and they're saying that in 2 years' time, they have also this process fully electrified, and they're using battery electric locomotives then in the terminal operation. And then, of course, looking in the energy efficiency, we have heard it in the talk before. So in general, rail transport is much more energy efficient, just based because of the rolling friction coefficient, which is much better because of the topology, which is much flatter, but then also because of the slipstream, especially for the very long trains. This becomes very good. And still there's, we have also heard it in the talk before, there is still improvements by really being compliant with the 740 meter long trains all over the network, but also then by using new technologies like the DAC, the digital automatic coupling, again, to save some energy efficiency in these processes. And compared to be, let's say, fair on that side, we also compared this with the energy efficiency, which is currently discussed for the freight transport on the road. And if you look there, then of course you have some energy savings from the aerodynamics for the platooning, but also if you would drive with lower speed in general. But if you look at this number, then this is on different scales. So you can say 4-5% of energy efficiency, whereas on the rail network, the efficiency savings in these terms are much higher. And still also the improvements on the right-side transport, they of course contribute to the road lag in combined transport. So in that sense, the combined transport will break the silos, so you can use the efficient way on the long haul rail transport and combine this with a really flexible battery electric trucking then on the road leg to become, in that sense, zero carbon transport. So to summarize, so as I said, there's a full study. You can have a look on that with all the numbers in it. So to summarize, these high energy efficiency is, of course, one main advantages on the combined transport, especially on the rail leg, which is very long in that kind of transport. Then the transshipment, if you think about terminals, can be fully electrified. So the technology is there, will be there within a couple of months or next year. And then if you look on the road leg, then it turns out that in the battery electric truck is one of the best ways to enable this flexibility then in the transportation on the short road leg in this combined door-to-door transport. So that's it, Charlie. So I hope you're happy with the results and with the study, and use it then for your next campaign step.
Thank you very much. Is the micro working? Yeah. Thank you very much, Thorsten. Very, very impressive, and of course you will have to digest all this. And the good news is that we have now 6 months to do a lot of publicity on the results of the study, but I also can announce that there will be a third study upcoming by end of the year, where we will go even deeper into details, partly on the costs of the zero carbon combined transport, and we will develop a roadmap on the zero carbon combined transport. For the moment being, thank you very much. Time is advanced, but I still want to have a short panel, at least some strong messages, as the meeting today is to set the scene. I would like Monika Genmutzig, Bernhard Ebner, Michael Stahlhut, Thibaut Fruitier, and Ima Genaye to come to the panel and to react on what they heard from the previous speakers and to make one strong message. And there will be a lot of other events upcoming, and in the other events we'll go into more detail. For the moment being, so please give a strong message from your side and react on what you have heard so far. Pardon? That's fine. Monika, may I ask you to introduce you quickly and to react to what you have heard and to bring a strong message out of your own experience?
Of the Wincon terminal located in the port of Vienna. In Vienna, we are a tri-modal terminal facility. So I'm glad that I can continue after we have heard about the zero carbon door-to-door combined transport. Combined transport. We do have a terminal module equipped with 4 tracks of train length 700 meters approximately, where we can enter without the diesel shunting. So we do not need electrified loco or diesel loco for shunting, but the terminal can be entered with the momentum of the long line loco. It's driving under the gantry cranes, it's unloaded, loaded, and it can exit on the other side of the terminal. The pantograph is just hitching in again to the energy, and the long line loco takes the train away. So under perfect circumstances, we do need more or less 4 hours for the whole train handling. And there is no carbon emission. The terminal is operated by green electricity. Well, it's comes from water power. So we are ready for it's at hand in the Vienna area, the zero carbon.
So you are ready?
We are ready.
Ready. So you can implement the study immediately. You have already started before. So we don't have to wait. We simply can do it.
Yes, given the opportunity of electrified road delivery, we are not only ready, we are.
So we can do it and we should do it. Thank you, Monika. Bernhard, from your side, also from Austria?
Yeah, from my side. My name is Bernhard Ebner. I'm heading the intermodal part of the Austrian Rail Cargo Group, and I'm managing director of Rail Cargo Operator. And yeah, I was asked to talk a little bit about energy and green energy. First of all, I have to say, shifting from road to intermodal it's the highest quantity of energy we can save and the highest quantity of green gas we can avoid. This is the first thing. Yes, in intermodal transport itself, there is something to do, but these are additional steps. So I think the first and important step is to shift the volume. The second thing is, and here I can tell a little bit from our group of companies, Rail Cargo Austria is part of ÖBB Group. So we are running the Austrian infrastructure as ÖBB infrastructure. And the main quantity of the energy comes from 9 own hydroelectric plants. So we have the so-called green energy in Austria, and there are countries in Austria where you can decide which energy you use. So we are buying also in Germany for our own traction green energy and doing this in Czech Republic as well. So these are 3 countries where we have 100% green energy for our trains. But there are also countries where you do not have this choice. Yeah, you do not have even the choice where to buy energy. It's only coming from one infrastructure company, and there we have to live with it, how it is. But wherever it is possible, we are trying to buy or produce green energy for our trains. But coming back to the first sentence, I think, yes, it's important to use green energy for the trains, but in the first step, we have to shift to the train because this is an even bigger step we can do in one step.
So there's very high potential. Thank you very much, Bernhard. Let's go to another big country in Europe, Luxembourg. Important for combined transport. Imad?
One of the biggest countries in Europe in terms of investment per inhabitant. So my name is Imad. I'm working for the Strategy and Business Development Department at TfL Multimodal, the Luxembourgish Railways. Very happy to be a part of this group. CFL is a group of different companies dealing with intermodal operations, so intermodal trains, conventional trains, road transport locally around Luxembourg and in Luxembourg. And we are blessed to have a cutting-edge, very brand new terminal that we are operating since now 5 years. This terminal is really could be some kind of a benchmark in Europe in terms of combining different technologies. Vertical one, brand new cranes, very efficient, electrically driven. And next to it, we have a very nice tool to shift horizontally, some more non-craneable semi-trailers, which is opening the door to more than 90 or 95% of the non-craneable semi-trailers, which is really also an excellent door opener and enabler to reduce, at the end of the day, the emissions on road and shift more loading units on rail. This terminal is already using electricity, trying to buy green electricity, of course. We are also using, well, last 2 years we had the pilot project to test electrical engines to make the movements inside the terminal. The validation is very positive, and we are now planning to go a step further and to replace step by step the actual diesel driven terminal engines. The list is very long in terms of innovation, but we are really going step by step to a net zero terminal, also including the shunting of the trains from the arrival track to the terminal.
Future is zero carbon combined transport, but the future has already started. Thank you, Imad. Michael, from your side, from the Swiss perspective.
And not only from the Swiss perspective, also within European view. First of all, 2030 is nearby tomorrow, but I'm 110% secure that we can achieve our decarbonization objectives. Why? Maybe from a broader to a smaller view. taking a look at the areas and what modal shift do we face in terms of south of Spain, south of Italy, where you find the green kitchens of Europe. These areas are feeding the north of Europe. From Spain, we have 1% intermodal, and going to Poland, 5% modal shift. Going into southeast, there's a level of maybe 5% modal shift. Switzerland, okay, Transalpine, 70% modal shift, and via Austria, 30%. If you sum up all the lorries which remain on the road, this is coming to 20 million lorries movement per year on road. If you only halven it by 10 million, then we are coming to a huge proportion, to a huge chance to shift to reduce the carbon footprint, to reduce CO2 up to a level of 20 million. And I guess you just mentioned 40 million for the entire rail system. Half of it, it's easily to be shifted on rail by only doing intermodal. And this is something what we really have to achieve in areas where we have a limited proportion, limited or really little modal shift. I'm pretty secure that we will find some solutions to do so. We at Supac, we are investing in fully electrified terminals just to support also in these entry points, just like Monica mentioned. And this is a marvelous, good other terminal where you can drive and go out. This is quite new and quite good. And all the other old terminals, they have to invest in lower electricity consumption. It means if you're going down with your container, you can save energy. You can even prepare. You can even get energy by putting a unit down onto Earth. This we are investing in. We just bought we just decided to bought some new cranes for terminals. We even signed the agreements. We will invest in more intermodality. We are believers, like the other colleagues here sitting here, in a lower CO2 emission path in Europe.
Thank you very much, Michael. This is very promising, and I'd like when you're so positive and enthusiastic about combined transport, because indeed it is the solution. I'm coming to France now.
Very hard to close this very high quality panel. Let me briefly introduce myself. So I'm Thibaut Fritier, the head of the combined transport activity of the Charles-André Group, French private company. First of all, I would like to thank the two presentation we had, because I've been astonished about the quality of both of them. I see two things. First thing, that we can drastically increase and improve the shift model with low investment. If we are just trying to use our whole brain together, I think we can go very further. So that was very, very interesting for me. Thank you very much. And the second one, that we see that intermodality is already the closest way to go to zero carbon emission. So I would like just to highlight something in France, because I think we have already a bit explained our sector. In France, as an example, Novatrans is using the French network, and we are already close to the zero carbon emission, because we have a high ratio of nuclear power generation in our energy mix. So that's already a first step. And as another example, we can say that since 2006, there is those saving in energy certificate that have been launched, and that show how important the source of advancement is for the combined transport activity. Those saving certificates can just give a kind of grant to the people who wants to shift model. And I think that those two elements shows that even if we are only at 9% of shift model in France, because that's an example, with a target of doubling this number to 18%, with a tripling of the combined transport activity. So we have a lot of tools that we can now use to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Thibaut. A big applause to our panelists. Unfortunately, time is running and we have to stop here. I would like to thank, first of all, our political speakers, Daniel Mess and Mr. Luxic and Mr. Giesecke. I would like to thank Josef Doppelbauer for having presented the view of the era, and this is really a view into the future. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much, Torsten, for having presented the study, and I can promise you there will be a lot of events in the upcoming 6 months on this topic, and we will go deeper and deeper in this issue, because again, combined transport is the low-hanging fruit, is the solution in order to achieve all the ambitious goals that the Green Deal contains. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you to the panelists again, and thank you to the people who have participated online. I will say goodbye to you now. See you very soon, and take care.